Woo! So pretty.
You about ready?
I'm good.
Okay. Do I look like shit? Do I look okay?
Better than 2 weeks ago. No, I'm just, you look good. You good.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to a Modern Man podcast hosted by JD Farrell. I'm Breeana Danell. Today I'm going to be taking over JD's podcast. How are you today, JD?
Oh, I'm doing good. Feeling pretty. How you feeling?
I'm feeling awesome. I'm actually really fucking excited. We have a very special guest today. It's going to be my best friend since I was 11. Like, we've been together for over 15 years now. Well, 15 years this year. So I'm really excited to talk to her today. And, you know, kind of pick her brain a little bit about what's going on. But this is Emily. Guys, you can say hello to Emily.
What's up, Emily? What?
Hello. Glad to be here, a part of it.
Yeah.
For sure. Really excited. We got a couple of things that we want to talk about today. I think it's going to be interesting because, you know, obviously I missed a week due to some unfortunate circumstances, so I wasn't able to be a part of last week. But what we had planned before everything kind of took off to this unfortunate circumstances was that we were going to have Emily on so we can kind of discuss a little more political things, kind of some things that are going on from a different aspect. You got a really awesome guest. He considered himself to be Republican. He had some really interesting points.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wanted to talk to somebody else about their opinions, maybe a little more in depth on, you know, how they feel about those things from a different side. So, Emily, tell us a little about you. I think we're kind of interested to know one of the main reasons that I was so excited to have you here and be a part of this is because I know that you've been able to live in two different areas where it's very conservative, but also very open and democratic, I guess, if you will.
Democratic liberal area, I guess I would describe.
So what would you describe yourself? Would you think that you're liberal, democratic?
I would go probably more on the liberal end.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay.
So
how did that kind of come about? Because Emily and I met when we were 11. I had just moved back from Georgia to Oklahoma, and she had just moved there that summer with her family.
And she was still a strong liberal at 11, like identified as a. I'm joking. I mean, you're 11.
No, but for real, this is crazy. Really? Ask her for real.
So I think the main thing is, at first I was born and raised in Philly. I was raised in North Philly, so it's very diverse.
Yeah.
So I never really interacted or been in a group of people where I was the only minority or even minority.
Yeah.
So my perception of things, understanding of things was completely different than when I went to Oklahoma. I went to Oklahoma around what?
10, 11? Yeah, it was something like that.
So then I stayed there until what? 11th grade or 10th grade? 10th grade.
10th grade it was.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah. Wow.
She ended up going back to Philly in 10th grade, which I think was great for her. Myself at that time, I didn't really understand the mindset. I think that's something that's so beautiful about our friendship is that I learned so much from her because I believe I told you last time that I had grown up very conservative. So it's like, you know, I have this girl from Philly coming to the school, very strong-minded, very, hey, no, that's actually not okay. This isn't normal.
Oh, you were pointing out like inequities and inequalities in the school and shit that would happen at that age.
And it's like Obama was running and Romney, we would have like class elections and they would just go, oh, we were able to determine the last like 2 or 3 presidents of our last elections, like they voted Republican. They thought Obama had no way of winning. And I think that's when like peak racism started to come out a lot more blatantly, more abundant, more direct. Yeah. And then it was kind of brushed off as jokes and things of that nature. Because what I've learned about small towns and county sides is very like a bubble-like atmosphere. So what you live and you learn, and of course, the first thing you learn is what your parents know. They're going to pass down what they know and give you kind of their values and what they believe in. And then you go in school, you make friends, you kind of determine your own.
Yeah.
So when you're going that route, you live in Oklahoma, everything's very conservative. But when it comes to politics, it's very narrow. It's like few things that they focus on.
Yeah.
And then those are kind of what majority goes overall.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's not as much education in poor areas, but that's the same when you go to inner city.
Yeah.
Education about government and things that go behind it is really isn't there.
So what would you say your experience kind of growing up in Oklahoma versus growing up in Philly, just kind of on the conservative side, like what's kind of some of the stuff that you witnessed or you experienced being in Oklahoma, where in Philly it was vastly different?
Yeah.
Was there any examples that you have?
I think the Bible Belt factors in. So a lot of Philadelphia is very liberal. It's more of believing of what you want for the people, kind of having your rights to do and access to certain things, but it's also to a point of you care about others. So you care about certain systems, you care about there being foundations and programs for inner school kids, athletic programs and funding and food and things of that nature. Versus a Republican mindset is very individualized. So it's focused on I'm going to work the hardest I can to be the best I can, and it doesn't matter what other people do or hearing. So, and I think with Oklahoma's mindset, with the bubble, like when terrorism struck or things, a lot of it became very fear mongering. And the fact is, they didn't know many Muslim people, or they don't really interact a lot of Mexican people or different type of immigration because they think immigration, they automatically think Mexican or the borders, and that's nowhere near the case. And they think they're just coming to steal the jobs, and it's very a lot of it's being uneducated about what's really happening and living in that bubble and never really looking past that bubble
because they don't know.
Because they haven't met people where it's seen the other scenarios. Because when you're in Philly, you're going to meet a lot of Muslim people. You're going to meet a lot of Mexicans, people who are documented, undocumented, and different stories and different backgrounds. Because it throws you into a pool of everything's mixed in.
Yeah.
So you get to experience a lot more. But versus Oklahoma, you get to see how people are sheltered, how they get the media, how they're raised, and how the education system is, and how it kind of, I think it's more propaganda. Of how we fit into how America is so great, and this is why we're great, this is why capitalism is so great. It really drives in on what we've learned in school. And then if you don't go past their higher education outside that state or outside a state that's very conservative, you don't learn any other viewpoints, and it leaves you very narrow-minded and decides, well, like understand what's really happening.
So I do have one more question, before we kind of push it forward about just your background. Would you ever say that, you know, just in the short couple of years, I don't want to say short couple of years, but you know what I mean, when you came back to Oklahoma and you were there for those couple of years, do you ever think that there was a time where you may have considered yourself Republican?
I wouldn't necessarily say Republican, but I would say I cared about taxes,
conservative,
or not necessarily about individual things like abortion. I've always been pro-choice and things of that nature. Guns, I don't mind guns. I just do think there needs to be more control and more restrictions. I think they're very too accessible. I think mental health is a big thing, but as Republican-wise, I can understand the need for taxes and being upset about them when you see how much is taken out. But as you kind of get older, you see how much like I'm taxed compared to someone who's making multi-million dollars, or versus even breaking over 140 grand, and you're not really taxed as much for like Social Security and things of that nature. And you're like, wait, so I make more money, but unless you're making 140, which is a very high number for a majority of like median households, unless you break that threshold, then you don't really get a benefit. You just lose a lot of money. So it hurts more to people in our level and middle income. And then the rich just keeps getting richer. So I would say like I had more inputs about taxes back then and strong votes maybe against it. But as you get up and you realize what taxes contribute and how it all works, depending how it's laid out, I do think they're beneficial.
Absolutely.
So,
do you have Oh, for sure, which we're about to dive into that because you actually brought up something that I'm really excited to talk to you about in just a second. But before we get to that, did you have any questions about maybe her background or different ideals that she's had growing up, JD, or anything?
Not really. I thought she was going to lead in when you were talking about like the East Coast, welfare programs and stuff for helping people and helping community. Like Republicans, then I feel like they attribute helping people only to religion and Christianity. Like you can't help people just because it's nice to help people.
Yeah.
And like it has to be like a calling by God, or I don't know. That's a big difference I realized from the South.
It's almost like performative.
Yeah.
So like they say they want to help people, but look at all the ice storms that happened in Texas and Oklahoma. Who really opened their doors and extended help?
Mm-hmm.
And then people, like when we go into homelessness and programs, like people bash LA, like look at all the homeless there. They don't take care of them. It's overrun. People aren't homeless all from LA, and that's the population. The population comes from all the other states because they don't have anything.
There's no other resources.
So they're going to flock over here to at least get some assistance, some kind of help.
Resources, absolutely. And that's something that I feel like where you had spent some time growing up and where I was raised is something that was, they would make it seem shameful almost if you wanted to get help from your community or like,
community programs, they look down on community programs like we shouldn't enrich and better everyone in our community.
Like it's a bad thing.
They look at the poor and they get disgusted by looking at the poor. And I think it's from the fear of them.
Yeah, it's definitely fear.
That's what I was about to say.
It's definitely fear.
Like, they get upset about that, but they don't realize that most of you are considered poor. You're making below poverty wages, but they don't want to accept that. They think it's disrespectful almost, or I'm not poor, I can pay my bills. Well, you're living in one of the poorest states in the country.
But the thing is, you have one medical crisis, one accident, you can literally be homeless tomorrow.
Literally to anybody. It could literally happen to anybody, and they don't want to accept that.
But yeah, that's why they're afraid. They see that a homeless person, and they see that could easily be them with one slip up. So it's the hate in themselves for not being able to get out of the hole. So they push it onto them.
It's like they're looking into a mirror, essentially.
Yeah. And they don't like what they see. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not easy to see them as human. You want to dehumanize them. So you
don't
feel guilt or need to.
And you feel better about yourself as well. There's something that we had kind of started talking about a couple of minutes ago before that I really want to talk to you about now that we can kind of delve into it more. So before we get into this, there's just a couple of things that I would like to just kind of bring to the severity of the situation about what we're about to talk about. So just in the first quarter of 2021, alone in itself, has had more mass shootings than in 2018, 2019, 2020. There's been over 130 mass shootings since January 1st, for 2021 alone.
Fucking crazy.
As of April 9th, it's 133, but you can grasp the concept. We're barely 4 months in, and we've had over 130 mass shootings. So Biden has, brought into play a new gun law. There's some kind of interesting things that I think are really great, really progressive. One of my favorites personally that, I'd like to talk about, they have what they're trying to implement that's called a red flag law. So it's like when a family member or law enforcement can petition the court to say, hey, this person is in crisis, like they're not okay, they don't need access to these guns. There's also a couple other things. Have you looked into this, Em? I'm sure you've watched videos on it.
Yeah. You want to like break down the details or go in depth?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Get after it. Yeah.
I think it's probably better to go through and then we can talk about, because there's definitely at each point, I think they relate to each other one way or another. And it kind of all ties into why there needs to be these restrictions and protocols in place.
So
okay, go through the whole new law. Go through all the structures of the new law.
Let's do like a little quick overview. Yeah, we'll do a little quick rundown, and then we can kind of get you guys' opinions on where we're moving. So obviously you guys heard me talk about the red flag law. Personally, that's my favorite from what I've seen. But they're also going to propose in 30 days a rule to stop ghost guns. So any guns that aren't including serial numbers, they're supposed to get which we'll talk about that.
They're supposed to get like a serial so it can be tracked. So I think either like the magazine or something has to have a label of a serial number versus you can make a gun 100% completely from scratch and no trace of it ever being found or registered anywhere.
Exactly.
So it makes it has to be registered and follows up the gun laws of everything else.
Yeah.
We can talk about that too. Then they one of the next ones is that a 60-day proposal to make it clear that when a device is marketed as a stabilizing device. So like if you're going to get a pistol and you're going to turn it into a short barrel rifle, there's going to be requirements from the National Firearms Act, which is another thing, as well as the administration investing in evidence based on community violence. Sorry, we're gonna have to edit that because I can't tell what I wrote. Community violence or something. Oh, community violence interventions. So the interventions are going to be proven strategies that they've had to kind of help reduce gun violence. As well as the Justice Department is going to issue an annual report on firearms trafficking. So that's going to be a good one as well. And it looks like the president is wanting to nominate David Shipman to serve as the director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So that's a couple of the things that they're looking for. What do you guys think about what they're trying to implement or what they're, proposing?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with Biden as he campaigned through the last of 2020 and 2019 that he talked about he was going to do gun laws and gun restrictions and make it harder for these mass shootings to happen. And it was supposed to be a big push in his first, I believe, 90 days in the office. So there's been a lot of pushback and anger with nothing happening, nothing being in place. And then we're seeing these mass shootings happening in Colorado in a grocery store, or some being prevented, the one with the massage parlors. You're hearing them constantly over and over of a new shooting in a new place. It's kind of, we're at this point, we're numb to it. Yeah. When we first heard it, it was devastating. But at this point, that's a common day in America.
Yeah.
And that's honestly sad that we're so desensitized to these mass shootings and things happening that I think it's easy for people to say, oh, this is not a gun issue. This is a person issue or a mental issue. But when you look into mental issues happen across the world. That's just not an American problem. And there's ones across the world. We're not seeing this gun problem, mental issue problem of mass shootings happening in other countries as we're seeing in America. We have extremely relaxed gun laws and nothing universal really across the board.
Yeah.
So from state to city, it changes. And I think when people bring up an argument like, oh, look at Chicago, Illinois, they have some of the stricter gun laws, but it's not countrywide. So it's only a couple of hours to cross a city border or maybe a state border to bring it through. So I think making it register is extremely important to have every gun registered. There really shouldn't be a need for guns to be unregistered, unkept. Everyone should have to go through some guideline or some clearance to be able to have a firearm or to operate them.
So what would absolutely, and I 100% agree that we need to have like all of these registered. It's going to, like they said, kind of reduce the gun violence because it's going to be able to hold accountability, right? But I think some people would argue, just from like a Republican mindset or a more conservative value, well, you're gonna, if it's not going to be, you can't get a gun, well, you're gonna learn how to make a bomb in the black market. And do you think that if they tried to implement this, that it would still be as easily, I mean, it's not like it's easy to get, I don't know how to just get onto the dark web, what I mean?
Grab a gun,
buy a gun. I don't feel like that's something that's normal, but do you think that even if they do start to implement this, that people are going to try to find ways to get illegal guns?
If anything, there's always going to be people trying to find ways, but it's the fact that we have it so easy right now for anyone to do what they want. So we should put up borders to make it a lot more difficult. Because at the end of the day, if you make it that more difficult, it's going to stop some people before they get there. Not everyone, like you said, is going to be able to research or find all of the information or make the gun.
Because a lot of it's like, as fucked up as it is, kids too, though, for real. Before, I mean, maybe not right now, but before we had school shutting down and everything, these kids is just going into their parents' gun cabinets and just going and shooting up schools. So even if they are registered, I mean,
it comes to education, backgrounds, making it stricter for someone. If you need to get a gun, you need to go through a class or safety class. And
of course,
everybody you need to be. You have to agree to has been locked up in the locked up space because if it's easily accessible, then you should be liable for anything that happens with that gun being touched. It's your responsibility as a gun owner to make sure no one else can have access to it.
That's very true.
My job. So it's we allow gun ownership to be so relaxed here because it's right. versus we should be cautious with it. Like we register every vehicle you get.
You can cuss here.
I can curse.
Yeah, this is explicit in this
Yeah.
bitch.
You have to register all your fucking vehicles, and you have to get insurance. Like it's documented with the state. You go through all these laws to get a driver license. Like hell, it's easier to get a gun than it is to vote in some states.
That's very
And that's
true.
the issue. It's so accessible. And then we want to talk about mental health and say that's a primary resource. Okay, but then we need to cut down who have access to the gun. Are these people who had a domestic violence past? Are these people who've been suicidal?
PTSD.
People who have PTSD or worry about shooting other people or had thoughts that way. We need to be more active into making sure they're not monitored, but actively getting help they need. And then that someone's being there in protection to say, hey, you shouldn't get a gun. Because honestly, when I went to go get my first gun, I think we were in and out within 15 minutes.
Literally.
It was like, and I got it concealed. And like, you can get an open carry in Virginia. You don't need any gun training. You can just go and buy it as long as your record's cleared.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane how easy it is to go get one. Like, I believe the Colorado shooter, a lot of it was purchased recently right before the shooting took place.
Mm-hmm.
He bought it in mass, and then the type of weapons he bought was recently banned. And the ban was lifted like maybe a month before. He was able to assess those type of weapons to do the shooting he did. So we need some more guidelines. It's not us saying, hey, we want to take all your guns away. It's more of, okay, this is getting ridiculous. It's happening too much. It's getting in too many of the wrong hands. And we need to put some responsibility on it. And I'm sorry, if you're one of those people who wouldn't qualify, your history, mental capacity, and then it's okay. Maybe you don't need a gun. There's other self-defense ways you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
So Darnell, what do you, she brought up like a really good point, and I think we can kind of, and I mean her as well, obviously, because she's lived in Oklahoma and she gets it, but especially now that you're there and the people that you encounter on a daily basis just from your profession, do you think you still experience those people who, like she's saying, they go straight to, well, this is them step by step trying to take away rights, right? So like they try to say, okay, well, you're implementing this, and this, but don't you realize they're just going to keep implementing more and it's going to cause them to take our guns away? Do you feel like you still have a lot of those people kind of around you who are very much like, oh, they're taking our guns away versus, hey, no, we're really just trying to make it safer. Like, we want you to have your guns. Yeah. She owns a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's 100% pro that amendment. But I feel like where we were living, more people, they take it to the extreme of, you're just trying to take our guns away. What's your opinion on that?
Well, for my thing, it's the same thing, like I said, with policies. It's because it's hard for people to actually sit down and have the conversation, the real conversation. Most people genuinely are okay with more restrictive laws. Most, like almost 100%. But the thing is that they do see it as, okay, now the government's gonna come in and, like I was saying with that red flag law.
Yeah.
Do they? Is it kind of like if someone is your conservator that they can do that? Because is that the law then that the government can come into your house and take your guns? Because that's what. Remember, my friend was.
It's not necessarily.
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a conservator. Now, this is from my understanding. What I read into, I could be wrong, I may have to, but from what I read and what I understood was that when your family member, or even, you know, if a law enforcement is pulling you over and they realize that you're not in the state of mind,
you're in crisis.
You're in crisis, exactly. Then they have the power to overturn and just be like, hey, no, you can't have this. So let's say Emily I felt like she was in crisis. I live with her. I felt like she was going to harm herself or somebody else. Yeah. I can call law enforcement and be like, hey, she's not mentally.
Well, you'll do a court order petition.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Right. I would court order a petition to say, hey, my friend, my family member isn't mentally well. They have a history of, you know, whether it be suicide or wanting to harm other people, so on and so forth. I believe that for right now, it's safe to withhold her firearms from her so she doesn't harm herself or anybody else.
I think it was a 60 or 90 day thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a permanent type of thing. It was like a crisis specifically.
It's exactly. Just until you can kind of get back into your normal headspace where you're okay, because we don't want to keep you from your guns, but if you're in a situation to where you're going to harm yourself or somebody else, then yes, I believe that somebody needs to step in to handle that, because unfortunately, mental illness, sometimes I know some people who suffer from, like bipolar disorder and things like that, who don't think that they need medications. And so sometimes you don't realize when you're in that state of mind, because you're manic, that, hey, wait a minute, like tomorrow you're not going to necessarily feel the same way. Like, don't go shoot up the club.
I mean, there was a family that their two sons did a murder suicide. It was 5 of them. They were depressed, and pretty much they said, we weren't better by this time next year. We're going to kill our family and ourselves, because they knew their family wouldn't be able to grieve without them. And they said this world was too dark. They didn't want their family to suffer. So with their mental illness and how deep they were in, they thought they were helping their family.
Yeah.
And then kind of resolving all of their issues. And then they killed themselves, well, the family then themselves.
Yeah.
So 5 were murdered. Like, I think the daughter was about to go to college this summer.
Oh,
so it's just like, it's a terrible story, but that just shows like we need to make sure these people can't go and get help, and then make sure we are identifying and actually having programs to help with people issues,
and not just kind of throwing them to the wayside. I feel like that's a lot
just
of the
arresting
thing.
them, or
They
Because
feel like
the community aspect.
yes,
exactly. That's exactly. So let's go ahead, and there's a couple other topics that I kind of want to get into today. So let's kind of, hey guys, just so you know, we wanted to give a little trigger warning. We're about to be talking about SA and domestic violence. If this is something that's a trigger for you, or that's going to make you feel uncomfortable or put you in a dark place, please fast forward to the next segment. We just wanted to give you a little warning. Look into that. So something that I thought was interesting that we could talk about today. I don't know if you guys have heard or saw anything about the Minnesota Supreme Court's decision.
Tell me more.
I'm sorry?
I said, tell me more. No, tell me more.
Oh, this is just kind of one thing, but I kind of want them to go together because we're going to speak a little bit on abortion. But this law in particular that the Supreme Court in Minnesota went for was a person who is sexually assaulted while intoxicated isn't considered mentally incapacitated, because if you choose to take the drugs or if you choose to drink the alcohol, then essentially anything that happens from you from that point is on you, because you chose to become intoxicated or you chose to do a drug.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Okay, so listen, if there's one thing that I'm motherfucking passionate about, and this is something, you know, if maybe we want to talk about another day, because that's a whole story in itself, but anybody who's a close friend of mine or who has known me throughout my years knows that in 2016, I was sexually assaulted. Yeah. So I get very, very, very passionate when it comes to things like this, because it's like, okay, I was blackout drunk when I was sexually assaulted. The only reason that I remember is I had little flashbacks of me, you know, getting my head. We won't go into that today, but I'll have little flashbacks, and it's like, sometimes you get blackout drunk and you don't remember. I know for a fact that this person was trying to sleep with me when I was sober, and I wanted no parts of that.
Yeah.
So I get really frustrated when I see things like this, because it's like things happen. Sometimes we go out and we have a couple of drinks and we don't intend on getting that drunk.
Yeah.
You can have 2 or 3 shots, or what if somebody slips something into your drink? They put a roofie in your drink, and then it's like,
or it's over poured. There's a lot
so
of
many
factors.
gray areas. Yeah.
Exactly. So I get really frustrated because I don't feel like in this situation that, yes, maybe that person, but that's not the point. Maybe that person shouldn't have drank so much, but that's not the point.
That's not the
You're
point.
supposed to be protecting. You're more focused on shaming women and or men for using drugs and alcohol than the person who sees a person who's too fucked up to say, no, this isn't okay. I don't want this. This isn't what I would typically go for. So why are you so focused on shaming the person who's literally a victim, who is a survivor of that trauma, versus getting on to these people like, what the fuck? You see this person is too fucked up to really give you a genuine answer, but some people are so mentally incapacitated that they think it's okay.
Well, the Minnesota Supreme Court has to be 70% white men. Because you get
Oh, yeah.
a law like that completely puts the onus and blame on the victim of, because like that's like a Bernie made it like a Ponzi scheme. You don't blame the people had millions of dollars or their life savings stolen from them. You don't blame them. No, they send that other person to federal prison.
This is what's concerning to me about this, though, is I feel like it's these states that are like this, kind of like how Oklahoma, if you're drunk and you give somebody oral sex, it's not considered rape. That's a whole other law. We could talk about that. But yeah, they approved that a couple of years ago. But what's crazy to me is with all this going on, if you believe that way, so let's say somebody does get blackout drunk, like myself, and was assaulted.
Yeah.
So if the person who assaulted me had impregnated me, these are the same type of states that try to say, no, you can't have an abortion and you can't go to another state to get it done.
Yeah, it'll be illegal. Yeah, Oklahoma's doing hard on the, not that we're not talking about them, but they're really doing hard on the abortion law in Oklahoma. I've been seeing that on the news lately, like finding the physician, yeah.
Exactly. And I'm about to get Emily's opinion on this as well. There's just another thing that I had wanted to say before we kind of go into that, and we can kind of go a little bit more deeper into it. But another just little fun fact is that just this year alone, in 2021, there's been over, so sorry, I had to burp, I'm drinking beer. You know, it's Sunday, fun day for Breeana. But there's been over 500 abortion restrictions in this year that have been introduced to 44 different states, while in 2019 there was only around 300 proposals. Yeah, no, it's, yeah, sorry, I probably, but while it was around 300 in 2019.
Just a heavy push on it.
So why do you guys think that why such a heavy push now? It
hasn't been a heavy push, I want to say, now versus other times. But to start off with the Minnesota law, that's more of the protection of men. So they can go back and say, she told me yes.
Oh.
So she can't come back and say, no, I was too drunk. I could, like, even though I said yes, it doesn't matter. I was too intoxicated. That's more of what
it's easy to push that blame onto somebody else versus taking responsibility. And some people don't think that they're wrong for that.
But that's the misconception of it. And it's the fact that you could say, when you look at someone drunk and incapacitated, you don't let them drive a vehicle, you don't let them do certain actions because you know they're not in the right mindset. So how are you going to say this person it's okay to fuck, to have sex or make a commitment like that or give that type of consent? They can do other normal things.
Like, if you're not going to give me my keys to my car, don't fucking sleep with me.
Especially with a stranger. Like, you can see if like people in a relationship, stuff like that, when they have different stuff.
Like, if I get drunk, if I sleep with my man, I don't feel
that's
bad.
what I say. Yeah,
that's my man.
Yeah, but that's different type of consensual. You've probably talked about it before. Like, there's different things of that nature. But if it's like a date the first time, or out with friends, or even complete stranger,
or somebody
that shouldn't be okay because you have insight. What Brock
Turner. Fuck Brock Turner.
Brock Turner.
Down Dustin. He kept like, oh, she said yes, and then that would have been fine. I mean, he still
got stopped with the wrist.
Yeah, he got nothing.
Months.
But that's the thing; it's all in protection of men because they think of rape. They think of rape of being a very disgusting act and very, very like assaulting and like I'm gonna beat her up, I'm choking her, things of that nature. Versus it's not just to that, I guess, extreme of physical harm. There's other types of rapes and how it is a rape, and it really boils down to consent. Yeah. And I think when we talk about consent, I think that bothers some people because they realize some of the actions they may have taken may have been a sexual assault, or they may have crossed that line with other people, and they don't want to admit that. They don't want to be looked like a rapist because a rapist sounds like the most awful thing,
scum of the earth,
in the world. Yeah. So they don't want to be considered that. So they kind of fall into these laws and push these laws because it protects more of the men.
It protects them, and I think it's easier for them as well just to be like, well, she was wearing this, or, you know, she's a self-professed hoe, like
she's a stripper.
It's all these excuses, not only to protect them, but it makes it easier for them to kind of take the
So be more
blame.
predators.
Well, to take the blame off of themselves.
That is protection.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It makes it that much easier.
You're dehumanizing them.
It
Just
makes
like
them
the
feel
homeless
better about
people.
themselves.
You're making them an object, not looking at them as the person. Like every person is human and different and has feelings. Like labeling them as the stripper, the hoe, the easy girl, the drunk girl. That's removing that person's like story.
Exactly.
I think,
And just focusing on the self person, like I got the consent versus what happened with the other person. What's their mindset? What would they do?
are they even in the frame of mind to?
Yeah, and then when you go have an abortion, it kind of goes into more control to have standards of where you can't do certain things, or the states that have stricter laws against like Planned Parenthood, you make it harder for women to find contraceptive. You make it harder for women to get treatment if they run into an STD or STI. You make it harder for them to get regular checks to make sure their uterus is fine or ovaries are good. And you make it that much harder. All these laws, like you are Christian based, and it to me is more of a distraction to focus, hey, Republicans have certain things they're very strong on, but like gun control or abortion, that wasn't a really big thing, I believe, until like the 70s or 80s is when the big
propaganda.
Yeah, like push to go anti-abortion and it's murder and all of this nature versus they don't want to see the whole story and they look at it as like, oh, I'm Christian, I support life. Versus no, people who get an abortion get it if it's medically necessary, or if they get it extremely early before anything is truly developed. So they have to get it at a certain stage, or it's life-threatening for the mother. There's so many other variations. And they talk about adoption or foster care, but it's overran by kids right now.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that's an option because when you ask them to adopt, that's not an option.
That's not an option. There's something before we kind of go into that, because I do want to go a little further into that. There's a point that I had wanted to make up about Planned Parenthood as well, that I feel like a lot of conservative or, very Republican people don't realize is that a lot of them see Planned Parenthood as an abortion house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is where people go to kill babies, but they don't realize that these are also people that are offering treatment and helping people with cancer.
Yeah.
Or helping women who decided not to go through with an abortion, to help them figure out different plans, whether you need to be on WIC, what kind of assistance you need. It's multiple. If you even just need to go to get a regular checkup, just your yearly as a woman checkup, these are services to provide for women, not just for you to go in and take an abortion pill and then it's over with. And I think that's something that's a very big misconception.
Misguided anger to one focus point to ruin all this accessibility that we have.
Well, back to what we said, it was from the Reagan to like the George Bush era that was just some type of propaganda where we didn't like the community. And if you need help from your community, you're looked down upon, you looked as trash, it's looked anything. Like if you need to go to your community to do something, if you can't go to your Walmart and buy it, you can't buy it on Amazon, people think you're trash and poor because you know what I mean? If you want to go to a community picnic barbecue, oh, it's because you're poor or
and that's just the society of America. And I think with the propaganda we talk about, it's so individual based because it's kind of like, it's up to me, it's my destiny and what I made to America versus there's a whole bunch of other hurdles that impacts with who you are in your society and what impacts what's available to you, accessible for you. And it's in that independent mind state because we look at COVID, you can look at other countries that they'll wear a mask because I know it protects you. It's never been an individual thing. It's never been that. But you look at other countries where it has more socialism or more communism. It's about caring for the other people and moving in a group.
Yeah.
So it's about protecting each other versus here, everything's very individualized. So it's my beliefs and my beliefs is what's right. And then that's what you should go by. And I think the big push for the religion and the abortion and all of that is just to focus on certain key points. Because honestly, if we have you focus on this, you're not going to worry about everything else that we're doing, other laws that we're passing to benefit us, or people hiring higher companies, or the trademarks that we're making across the world, or even the environmental damage that we're doing right here in the United States. If you look at Tampa, which is ridiculous, toxic wasteland, like you let things like this go by and go past because they make you focus on this one thing. And I think that's the big thing of abortion because with Christianity, they just focus on it. So
It's easier to.
they support abortion. Oh no, I'm a bad person. I'm a baby murderer. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
So you teach fear. And then when you only focus on the fear and you just fear monger, like Donald Trump, honestly, that's how you get people to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
they
that's how
don't
you
believe
get
that
to
they're
believe it.
blind. That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
what
bubble.
brainwashing. Yeah, that's
It's a
that's
bubble
what it
and
does.
brainwash. When you only want to see things you want to believe in and that support yourself, you're in a bubble.
I think this is like. Go ahead.
Oh, I want to ask Emily and maybe your advice on this too before we move on.
Of course.
Like I know we need stronger gun laws, and I'm very pro stronger gun laws, but just knowing the billions and billions and just people just don't want to listen to the conversation. Would you not rather get, better education for schools, healthcare? Like, would you not rather knock out 3 to 4 amazing infrastructure things? And I know it sucks, but then putting gun laws on hold for a year or two and then address them. But just because
Because gun laws don't happen. Those changes, I feel like, don't happen overnight. Is that like essentially? Is that what you're?
Yeah, because the NRA and the money, I just feel like they will
NRA
fight to
go
death.
She said, first of all.
I know I said they're a donate group, but the amount money rules the world, and they put so much money into to where I'm just saying, rather than fighting them, I'd rather get healthcare for everyone. I'd rather get better education, things like. Huh?
It's a huge fight, but
Yeah.
I don't think the gun law legislation impacts this legislation, like to education or healthcare, because they're all going to roll in separate bills.
And
so
yeah,
it's going to be a different fight. So I do think the gun law needs to go down, because honestly, it should have happened 10 years ago.
Yes.
I agree too. Yeah.
Honestly, because if you're looking at other companies, what was it? Trying to think. New Zealand, when they had their mass shooting and how strict they got on guns right away, it wasn't even hesitation. Within that week, they took actions. I think Australia did something similar. Why are we needing a decade to argue little bits of rights and I don't want more registration or things that are not even being taken away just to make it harder and less accessible?
Because like how many lives were taken just in, like you're saying, just in those 10 years? Like it's crazy that we're just now getting to this point to where we're continuously pushing for it and it's still not enough.
Yeah. But the gun laws, I feel like they're easier to impact versus a healthcare change. Because you look how Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, people didn't even know those were the same thing, and they compare different things. So it's all the misunderstanding and the misinformation that's pumped through Fox Media or Facebook or just BS websites that people don't even read the article or what's actually happening. So they look at healthcare like, oh no, my premiums went up, so I had to pay for you. And people only look at the direct impact.
Yeah.
Versus the gun laws can be passed, but then as we work on a healthcare bill, it brings up a whole nother rise of issues and errors that average A person doesn't want their premiums to rise. But we have to realize, because how we have a capitalist society, we're forcing our medical care to be higher right now.
Yeah.
We're forcing us to pay more for certain procedures that are significantly cheaper in other places, because you know why? The government pays for it.
Mm-hmm.
There are more regulations, even for fucking food.
Literally.
Like, we're allowed to eat trash here because honestly, we pay for our own healthcare. We have to take care of ourselves, and then there's just money in the system. Versus you do that shit in Europe, they got to pay for your doctor visits,
so they
know more problems, cholesterol. So they ban a lot of the artificial products that's in here. So it's really, I think there's so many issues that's been on the layout for so long that I don't think it really should be pushed back. I think it should still be identified and addressed right away. It's just we have to get out of this mindset of versus each other and
coming together. Exactly.
And I think Biden's trying to do that with the new tax because he's very moderate. That's why people didn't.
And that's what I love about him, because
he's very moderate.
Yeah.
So he's not going to do everything that's going to please all the liberal side or the conservative side. It's not going to be pleased. He's going to try to go down the middle
for whatever's best for everybody, essentially.
Not best for everybody, but what's going to please everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I should have reiterated.
Because I'm pro Bernie. I want that.
We love Bernie. We love Bernie.
And I'm EW, Elizabeth Warren all day. EW is my girl. That's we out here.
I don't believe if you're born poor that you deserve to die or be poor for the rest of your life to pay for all of your medical bills. And that's just kind of what it falls into. Like, medical shouldn't be up for discussion. That should be a right.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Well, she believes that too. Yeah. She's just not as radical. I love her passion for single moms and teachers, because
Because they're so underpaid here.
Yeah.
So underpaid.
And like we focus, like if just about the police force really fast, not to dive in too deep. We push so much job or responsibility and different tasks onto the police force versus taking that away and making more programs, getting more therapists, counselors, people to respond for traumatic experiences, or people having episodes that have that there. Yeah. So that makes their job easier and they're not stressed out and trying to handle 500 million things. And then we have people to actually focus on what's going on versus temporary solutions of throwing people in prison in this endless crazy cycle that we have right now.
Yeah. I feel like, sorry, now that she said that, I feel like I vaguely remember seeing somewhere here in the US to where they actually I'll have to look.
I think it's Denver.
Maybe where they made
unit.
Yeah, because they made more. So if somebody was having like a bipolar episode, to where normally like the police would show up, they have like counselors, therapists, like or somebody exactly to actually talk them down and give them the proper help that they need versus fucking shooting them. I don't know. Maybe
I heard that was a plan when I think it was like during the whole like protest. People were saying like during domestic violence, they should send counselors, not police officers. Like I remember people saying so. I didn't know a state or city actually implemented because that's what defunding means.
Yeah, they implemented it for like mental health breakdowns. But I think that's a good point for domestic violence or rape victims. Yeah. When you get a male officer who comes in that has no compassion towards
it's triggering.
With a gun on their hip. Dude, like
she's not an officer. I'm glad that you said that because that just reminded me. And after this, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take a break real quick and then come back. But now that you said that, the officers are traumatic, right? So when I was going through my sexual assault case, I had a lot of problems with the detective. It was a woman, but she was you could tell that she dealt with this shit every day. She was very cold. Yeah. So it was almost as if she didn't believe me, but she was just there because she had to be. But I actually had an experience with a doctor to where I had a cyst and it's like down there, you know what I'm saying? So he's like down in my area and I'm explaining to him like, listen, I'm not comfortable. I would prefer to have a woman this is triggering me and just continues to slice me up and literally while I'm screaming and crying like, you're scaring me. I'm having flashbacks. I'm traumatized. So imagine being in a high stress situation to where the police who are supposed to help you are actually triggering your episode and making you escalate. And it makes you look like you're crazy. Yeah. But it's not that you're crazy. It's just like you said, it's adding more trauma to it and you're reliving your traumas that you already haven't dealt with. Yeah. You need a mental health expert there with you, whether it be sexual assault, whether it be domestic violence, whether it, there's so many situations to where you need somebody who's not going to be like, well, why were you wearing this? Why did you
question your actions?
Who's just going to listen.
Mm-hmm. And just to tie back to the Republican Democratic thing, I think a lot of what we talk about in full detail, both parties and people on both ends would agree on. It's just looking past that surface level of the initial and say, hey, let's actually talk about, look at what's happening, everything else that's involved versus, oh, it's just baby killing, or oh, it's just making sure the doctors have access right away to file the police report, or versus let's get people help. And I think if we go down route and actually open more discussion, we can work into it. But it's just, I think everything that's done in America, especially since we started the two parties, to pivot towards each other or fight against each other, and how you can keep that disagreement going. Because if you start to agree, you can get progress, but if you keep that disagreement, nothing's going to change. And we're going to keep worrying about abortion for the next 20 years versus environmental problems or actual things that need to get fixed right away, or immigration and things of that nature that we need now, or Medicare.
Okay, guys, so moving forward, something that I really wanted to talk to JD and Emily about was actually everything that's going on with DACA. The House has actually recently passed 2 immigration bills to establish citizenship for millions, guys. We're talking about millions. The first bill is actually to impact those who are unlawfully brought here to this country as children. And then the second bill is a Farm Workforce Modernization Act, which actually provides path to legal status for farmers to make them certified here in the U.S. At least half of them, which is 2.4 million farmers, 2.4 million workers are actually illegal. So I think that that's fucking awesome. I think that's great that these people that are coming to try to make a better life for themselves in the US, this is something that's going to make it, because I have friends where it's taken 7 to 10 years just for them to get documented for all the processes that they have to go through. So what do you guys think about what they're trying to propose for this bill, what the House has passed?
So to start with DACA, I think everyone across both boards can kind of have some type of agreement with DACA because these were children who were brought over here. So it wasn't necessarily their clear intention. So even I think both parties can look at children a little bit more innocently and look at them, okay, they deserve some type of beginning. And to stay in DACA, you have to go to school, you have to work, you can't have criminal charges. So there's guidelines for you to be in there. And when DACA started, it was supposed to be aligned to citizenship. And then when presidentials changed, that kind of got destroyed. And now you have these kids, millions of kids now in limbo who did the requirements, went to school, followed everything they were supposed to, kind of left up in the air to the point they can get deported at any moment, even though they lived in America their whole life. And you're threatening to deport these children to homes or places they can get murdered at. They have no understanding of. They never lived or stepped foot in. So you want to shove and send them off. So I think that clear DACA thing is very important because it passed in the House and it's sitting in the Senate. Yeah. And I'm not sure what they're arguing or debating of, but it's kind of sitting in the Senate before it can actually be passed. And I think what's causing that pause is the farmers' portion. Yeah. Because when you go to Republican mindset, they're going to be worried about, oh, they're going to steal our jobs. We just going to open the door and let anybody come in here and take everything. But that's not the way to look at it. They're already here working. Our farming literally depends on illegal immigrants.
Literally, this is actually something that Darnell, I'm going to just say it, motherfucker, I'm drunk now.
Just say it, go for it.
I didn't say JD. But that's something that Darnell and I was actually talking about when we recorded our last podcast, is that it's crazy. This is a very big reason that I actually wanted to bring up immigration and other things, so on and so forth, to kind of delve a little more into that, is because a lot of people are very angry that these people who, mind you, are coming straight from their country. A lot of them you're mad at people who can't speak English for taking a job, who's getting paid less and works harder, is what I'm saying.
They're mad at the individual concept. They look at them saying, hey, there's some our jobs versus jobs we don't really want. And they look at, oh, I have a cousin, for instance, and they're coming and taking a good job that, we should be able to get. But you have to think, if someone's coming over here with a language barrier, no background, nothing here, and they're able to get the job, then there's maybe something wrong with you and what's going on in your background, your aspect, that you're incapable of finding the job. That's the truth. Push the anger to the immigrants because it's easy to do, because it's like dehumanizing again. They don't look at them as people. They don't. They think because you're born over there, that you have
you're
no
less
rights
than
or anything.
You're less
even
than.
though the landlines were different back in the day, and some of those people's ancestors lived on this land. But not to even dive into that, it's literally the fear of they're taking our jobs, they're doing this. But in reality, when they're offered these jobs, most white Americans quit. They're not there for these farm jobs. They don't get paid or do the labor for the amount of money they do get. We depend on these immigrants to work. Like, that's not ifs, ands, or buts. And they're not here. Some people worry about crime. That's the fear mongering. You take these very few instances of things happening and you make everyone believe they're all that way, versus looking for people who are escaping poverty, crime, rape, or domestic violence, and they're looking for a safe place to live. And then everything has guidelines and restrictions. So it's not an open door policy. But even for refugees, they're lessening the amount of refugees we open up to.
Absolutely. But that's what I'm saying, is that these people are seeking refuge. They're looking for a safe place, because a lot of these people who are migrating here is essentially Mexico, for instance.
It's hard.
Drug cartels.
To be classified as a refugee is a very hard guideline.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
They're seeking a better lifestyle, because gangs in Guatemala.
It doesn't mean their life is not being threatened and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's what I meant. They're just seeking someplace
A
that's
better life.
physically safe.
But even people who try to apply refugee status are getting turned away. We're trying, even for the legal amount of immigration we bring in, that we open our doors to, they've been making trickier and tying down the numbers even more. And then the fact is, we still have cages. We still have children separated. We still have people locked up because their ICE is gathering more people. Then we have places to put them, and then we have to put them in hotels and open other like buildings to make cages again, versus actually figuring out the problem, because they push the blame as ICE is a rogue agency and we don't know what's going on, versus you have ICE breaking laws and figuring out people left and right, and then but we're making promises that we're going to keep you safe, but then we're doing all of this. It's scary for people who come here.
Now that you say that, before I do have a question. Do you think that just since, and obviously we're not going to go on a rampage, we all know how we feel about this man, but do you think it's always been difficult for immigrants regardless? I'm not trying to minimize that struggle in any way, shape, or form, because it takes a lot of hard work to get here and to become a citizen and to do what you need to do to be here. But do you think that ever since when Trump took office that it kind of escalated? It's always been an issue, right? But don't you think that it's been kind of more of an in-your-face issue when Trump took office?
Definitely.
What issue are you specific?
I'm talking about
people being upset about immigrants, or the issue of gathering the immigrants?
More so, I mean, kind of both. Obviously, I think we can all agree that we've seen more people get a little bold with their disregard of immigrants, but more so in the sense of when he came into office, do you think it made it a little more difficult for people who were trying to actually come here to get their
because they were
he passed laws to make it more difficult. So that's literally, yes, he literally passed laws to make it more difficult. And the one thing about Trump is he attacks only one group at a time.
Yes.
So other marginalized groups, because even though he talks about Mexicans, talks about Black people, talks about like Arabic people, and goes down that line, or Asian Americans, he's only attacking one group at a time. So those other minorities bash into that, and it goes into the fear mongering that they're coming to steal their jobs, they're gonna rape your woman.
That's why
it comes to like kind of that savior complex, like, oh, America's safe and we need to keep America in America and nothing else past that. So it's that fear mongering. He definitely fed into that and amplified it, because that's his whole following. His whole political campaign is fear mongering.
Because that's what essentially one of his, I don't want to say campaigns, but one of the speeches that he made was
his campaign is fear mongering.
Well,
that's
but
his whole background.
No, for sure. But how he was.
Let's not give him too much a platform. That's what.
No, for sure. But that's what I was saying. He was just speaking on how immigrants came over here because they were raping our women, and like she was saying. So that's something that it's always been an issue. I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of more conservative and or maybe Republican or just America people in general.
I think it's poorer conservatives who are pushing the blame of their hard life and pushing it off to all these immigrants are taking our jobs. Because that's the fear mongering they're being built. It's like, look, they're coming, they're doing this, they're bringing this crime rate, versus looking at themselves and reflecting on themselves and taking ownership of what they have going on.
As you're saying that, I was just thinking, like, what is it? I know I would ask that guy too, like, what does it mean to be American if we think these people, because they're going to come in, they're just going to live in their community, cook food, work hard. Like Jaylene's cousin, who I'm talking, literally, she's lived in the country 24 years, has worked, her mom has worked a whole lot and just became a citizen, has 4 kids that are American citizens, all that's paid her taxes, but has not been back to Mexico.
That's still working on getting her citizenship.
I have many friends. Many people who are not here illegally at all. People who came as children. I know people who deported and come back.
But what is? Sorry, what?
No, what were you saying?
No, just like, because how many people are incarcerated? How many people, neighbors, commit crimes? Like, what is American? You know what I mean? Like, everyone just.
You mean, what's your definition of American?
What is? Like, I'm asking the people who hate immigrants.
America's built off immigrants. Yes, that's the misconception of, I think anyone in America now who came here, unless you're indigenous, you migrated here. So you were an immigrant. So you don't have a true right to this land. To like, this is my land and you can't come on it No, you took this land. You stole it. You made
You
treaties and did
murdered
not abide by it.
in masses. You murdered in masses to retrieve this land.
What do y'all think? I guess that's what do y'all think they think an American is? It's usually white, but even black people sometimes.
It's just the freedom of rights and being able to do what you want and be anything you want. The possibilities are endless and sky like limitless in America.
You think they really think that?
I think
that. They think of capitalism and the American dream.
No, I genuinely think that's what it comes down to. They think of, like she said, the American dream that
Why are they poor?
Hold up. Potentially, which is obviously we know this now isn't the same because minorities, so on and so forth. But if you're lucky enough to be a white person in America, you think that, okay, well, I can just come here. I can go to school. I can work hard. I can get these grades. I can build a business. I'm not saying that that's not impossible, but it's different for different demographics. I think that we can.
There's advantages.
Yes, there's advantages. It's exactly when it comes back to white privilege.
It's just not like in one level playing ground. So I think when people think like an American dream is, you have the ability to grow and become anything you want, but it's also to have an ability to determine what you need as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So like everything very individual based. So like if I want something, I can do it. If I want to shoot guns, I can do that. If I want a big old truck, I can do that. If when I quit my job, start a business tomorrow,
I can do that.
You can do that.
What's your idea of being American, JD?
Well, I mean, I almost don't have one because mine's different from, I feel like the idea of mine is way too idealistic.
Let's talk about it. What's your, this is our idea, so I think this is good. This is an open forum. What's your idea of what it is to be American?
Oh, well, it's like general terms, it's a very egotistical, better than everyone. That's what I think.
Okay.
That's what America is biggest.
Yes. Absolutely. That's why we're an embarrassment. Biden said it himself. We're an embarrassment from when the alcohol hits.
Yeah. No, there's nothing really in America that makes us truly great, but we want to talk about we come from the greatest country in the world because of the propaganda. There's nothing in America.
Propaganda. It's all
compared to education, violence, rate of happiness, medical, food. There's nothing in America that tops anything. But we want to claim to be the best country because we're brainwashed to say we're the best country. I think that's what being American is.
And that's why I just said that's what it is. We're the best.
That's true, right? But when you think about it, all those things are true. But all I'm saying is I think it's per se great to be an American, right? In the sense that we're free. But are we though? To an extent.
But what country are you going to say who doesn't have as much freedom as us?
Exactly. It's 2021. It's not. It's not Sodom and Gomorrah and biblical times, like
vaguely speaking.
But that's what Americans think, though.
America's one of.
I'm free, and everyone else is suppressed, and they can't live their lives. And that's not the reality.
That's not the reality.
Prince Harry spoke out against the monarchy. Okay.
Africa poor, we're ignorant over here. No. Like we can't even have fresh water in America. We're calling other countries poor.
We're killing our people, yet we're free in the greatest country in the world.
No, you guys are. That was too broad of a statement.
I know.
Obviously, I understand that,
but
we're not.
It's not what you say of American, but it's what
Americans. No, but I just feel like reiterating that because I don't want people to listen to this and just think that I'm just like one of those little white bitches that it's like, oh, we're free.
You literally gave you your input what people think is.
And that's. Okay.
So you gave your input of that. Is that your opinion?
Yes, thank you. I didn't want it to like.
She's like, that's not me.
I'm like, wait a minute. I was just. Okay, that's all I wanted to reiterate.
We know.
By the way, we're also the greatest because we can get our guns. After we did like so many anti-guns,
water and food until it's time to lock us the fuck up.
Unless you're black.
Only if you're white. They'll give you water and food.
There's definitely white privilege when it comes to mass murdering.
Yeah. So actually,
and, colorism.
I can't.
People in Vegas just not. It's definitely colorism in the scale of colorism in every society.
The fact that we immediately. Sorry.
No,
I mean,
go
just because
ahead.
of
Go
Georgia,
ahead.
really
We'll,
quick.
If a
we'll get
white
to that in
person
a
shoots
second.
up, we can immediately talk about him. I think we touched on it, how he's emotional, he has mental illnesses. But the black dude who does anything with one time, oh, he's ghetto. The one, oh, he had a single mom child. You know what I mean? Like the white privileged kid.
The salons, he had a bad day.
Yeah, that's the white narrative. But the black, look at when they say about Chicago with all these kids who parents get incarcerated and they're growing up with nothing. Oh, but they're bad apples. They're bad kids. No,
Yeah.
they're not having bad days and bad lives and bad years that this trauma. Yeah, but sorry, we can move on.
No, but now that you're speaking about that, this is literally the perfect intro to the next segment that I wanted to speak about now that we're kind of on this topic, because it's always been an issue, but I feel like now we're kind of more seeing things, and now they're just making it more in your face and a fuck you, but voter suppression.
Mm-hmm.
We see all the things that's going on, how they are not only trying to make it a misdemeanor to provide food and drinks to those who wait in line, but
In
Georgia, no,
it's illegal
listen.
to give someone a bottle of water waiting to vote.
But wait, we'll get to that. But wait, not only that, they're limiting drop boxes for some counties. So, and not only are they limiting them, they're limiting them, and the ones that are limited won't be available the last 4 days of the election.
It's because Georgia flipped blue.
Yeah.
So they're making it absolutely harder and impossible for people to vote, because at the end of the day, they know if every American had more access to voting,
We got the numbers.
and they're going to vote in different ways, and people are going to pay attention more. So if you make it harder, you make people want to quit and say my vote does not count.
Yeah.
People won't vote, and that's what's happened for so long. But I think with the politics and the environment, everyone's like, okay, hell, like no, we have to vote so this shit can happen again, because Donald Trump was really awakening that fuck. We can't let that shit happen again, because so many people did not vote. It led to that and allowed someone who had no political experience to be elected to presidency.
And the fact that not only somebody who had no political experience taking them to be able to be a president, but it's almost like, I don't want to say like a human rights situation, but it's just, you're in line. They don't want to give you water. They don't want to give you basic.
Around the world, like the voter suppression in the United States and the redlining that we have, and how they draw the county lines for voting and seats and House seats and representatives. Like voter suppression is a real issue in America. We talk about we have freedom, we have the right to vote, we have to say
Democracy.
But do we? Do we have that though? Truly,
It's propaganda. That's what we've been saying. Yeah.
And it's the brainwashing. They're like, oh, all of these mail-in votes. There's so much fraud. Where's the fraud? Prove to me the fraud. You can't say there's fraud and just claim at it. That's why all the court cases got thrown out. You have to prove it and show something was happening. But other places have done it. Mail-in voting is not new. It increased because what? We had a pandemic.
But they saw we had the numbers and how much people liked absentee / mail-in ballots, and they're like, I'm gonna keep doing this. And so they're trying to cut it off because
more people will vote.
Yeah,
exactly. But that's something that I think, for instance, some of the people that I work with are very conservative. I don't want to say necessarily Republican, but they do have a lot of Republican core values, and they may even consider themselves that. But that's something that I try to have the conversation with them about. And who knows, maybe we can interview one of them one day. Yeah. But I was like, listen, you guys keep speaking about how all this voting was, it's fraud, it's bullshit. Tell me how this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And so I would ask, well, I see what you're saying, but if that's the case, why does it keep getting thrown out left and right in court cases? And they would be like, well, you see videos of them just like people filling out ballots and not filling out anything else other than just.
So they watch brainwash propaganda.
They watch the video.
And they believe it's true, versus if you do a Google research on how things are processed and things are actually done. And
the video of me filling something out.
Ballot boxes, it was like, oh, look at all these ballot boxes they're throwing away. Oh, it was the press moving their stuff. Like what? Oh, the ballots being burned. Those was false pre-ballots that had nothing on them.
Yeah, like
I'm like, it's the ridiculousness that they see on Facebook, and Facebook is a real issue. And we
Yeah.
talked about Russian, like not here, but like the interference. And there's so much suppression that they don't want to look at voter suppression. They look at people are committing these crimes, but they're looking at false things that aren't really happening, believing it's true and not realizing they're suppressing the vote because they have you brainwashed. They know they're gonna have you vote the way they want you to vote, and they want to make sure that people who are reading into it and diving in deeper don't have as much accessibility. Because at the end of the day, if you're American, you have a right to vote. You have the right to have your voice heard. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it's easier to get a gun than to vote.
That's
in
how
the
this
most
podcast
countries,
started. Yeah.
like voting the day is a holiday. You have off. Most people work 12 hours a day. They can't make it to go vote. It's hard to go vote and make out time of your day to go into a place. And some places are hour lines, some are 8 hours lines. Yeah. Some places are really bad.
But
ridiculous. Like,
mail-in ballots have been a thing since the Civil War.
But but you look at like, and they made it harder. They shut down more polling places last year. Like Louisville, they had one polling place of the whole city, and that city is predominantly black. Mm-hmm. Like it's so
the blackest part of
right voices to be heard. And at the end of the day, you can say you're Republican, you can say Democratic, but at the end of the day, everyone has a right to vote.
The vote.
Yes.
And then whoever wins, that's how it works. So you can't suppress my vote because you don't like it, and that's what's happening. And there's happening a lot more in Democratic areas and liberal areas, or people who are not white.
Yeah. Isn't that what's ironic though? Isn't that what's ironic about this whole situation? Is that the same people that are crying about, oh, this election is a fraud, are the same people who are like
changing the laws and trying to rig it.
Make it harder to vote.
Exactly.
Because they think they actually lost,
but you want black, white, Indian, everybody to vote, right? But again,
but they don't.
It's the same people who truly don't.
And it's why, like, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm going a little off, so that's why go what you're gonna go.
I was about to.
Oh, well, because you went on Facebook and I'm like, save our children. Who's our children? If you don't care about the kids at the border.
And they don't bring that up. They don't bring that up now that Black Lives Matter.
I know you do.
That was only a thing to distract from Black Lives Matter, because that's always been an issue that only came up to navigate to move away from Black Lives Matter. Anyone who talks against Black Lives Matter or not for it, or they don't understand that, they just refer to BLM because they see it as an attack on them, which is not. And then for the most recent, like to Stop Asian Hate and things of that nature, they don't want Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate to combine, because there's power when people join.
All minorities need to combine. I've been saying that for years.
Something that I've noticed though, I feel like a lot more people deterred from and made such a big deal. Okay, like when it was Black Lives Matter, it was Blue Lives Matter, or it was Save Our Children, right? But I feel like with Stop, or at least for me personally, but Stop Asian Hate, I haven't seen anybody counteract that. Like, not all lives matter, or
because it's not saying anything about your life. It's just saying stop hating Asian. It's not saying stop Black people or stop hating Black people.
That's what
when you say like all lives matter or Black lives matter. Like, but when in my life, stop saying Asian hate. It's not saying like people. They see it as the wording.
Okay.
Of it.
I met these vegans out, and that's what I was trying to tell them. Like, don't, and they're like talking to environment. I'm like, don't tell people that their life sucks. Like when you, or like that, not to do shit. Like in politics, don't tell people you're racist. Like that isn't going to make them want, tell them eat more vegetables. Like, don't, tell them stop hating Asian people. Like, you know what I mean? Just, you don't got to tell them like that, what they're doing in their life isn't shit. Just give them a suggestion.
Do you think it would be different though versus, let's say, okay, so now we see how people have reacted to Stop Asian Hate, right? Do you think that they would have do you think that they would have reacted the same if they heard Stop Black Hate, stop murdering Black people?
It's white cops killing Black people, and the white people identify as the white, whether you're male.
Do you see what I'm saying?
But it's not the same issue. It's not police attacking people and protecting the police versus innocent. The type of hatred that the Black community gets and the Asian community gets, it's still hatred, but it's different types of hatred.
Okay.
And one's community hatred.
Yeah.
So Asian people look at people who are immigrating, they look at weaker and they look as more of an infestation.
Okay.
So they look like they're infesting our country versus they'll look at Black people a different aspect. So it's different concepts. It's still hate, it's still wrong.
Of course.
Different types of hate, different types of advantages, and just
they think we're dangerous, you know what I mean? Which Yeah,
because like the issue in America is people will look at a Black person and feel intimidating or they're a danger versus when they see an Asian person, they may see them vulnerable and easy to take advantage of. So they may harm, like in the community, like a Black man's more in danger, and then the Asian community, like our elders are in danger right now because they're attacking our elders.
That makes sense. Okay.
Or so it's still fucked up, but it's different types of fucked up.
No, of course.
Because there's always been xenophobia since they put Japanese people in internment camps and
crazy
rates, and then literally pushed them away. In the Titanic, there was a family or two families of Chinese people, and they literally pushed them out that week and wouldn't accept them in. There's always been a hatred to the immigration group. Like even now, the most deported like immigrants right now is Black people and like their community. So you see Muslim and Mexican, but at the end of the day, like America that we have today is founded on racism. So it's hard to say, hey, you're a racist, and it's hard to call that out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all of what we were brought up into society has some type of foundation or structure into racism.
I know I have racist ideals that I don't want.
So it's more like identifying, like, hey, this is what's happening, realizing it, understanding it, and then confronting it. Like, and you're gonna have something like when it comes to misogyny, racism, all of that, you're gonna have stuff built in that you know, and it's up to you to identify, dissect it, and to become a better person from it. And I think people are afraid to do that because they don't want to be called a racist, or like they think racism kind of like how like rapists now, it's like the force of the scum. They don't want to be that person. They're like, I'm not a racist. I have Black friends,
but there's
I have Mexican friends, but no, I don't want any immigrants to come here and take my land and do my job.
I'll shoot them.
They take advantages, or they do this. Like, no, you're saying a lot of racist shit. And it's the fact that a lot of people don't think they're racist because they're like, oh, fuck Black people. But you lock your doors if someone walks by your car. So what's up with that? Or like you judge people by their hearing. You think it's unprofessional, but that's your natural hearing. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Like people can't have dreads, but she can have pink hair.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
It's just, but now braids are cool and a thing that it's not a problem in the workplace. But before, people can even wear dreads in school or braids in school. And I think that's where people get angry of, and people see division versus like, oh, you don't like this
unity,
versus like you need to understand why it upsets people, what's embedded in that. And I think that's hard for people to stop and look at myself like, damn, I may not be right.
Yeah.
May not have known the right things, and then
that's a hard pill to swallow.
It's hard.
That's
and no one's gonna want. Not many people want to do that, and I think that's the thing. Just in America, we don't want to look at that. We want to focus on the one little issues, claim that, and then fight over that. Because if you talk down the nitty gritty, you're gonna find a lot of contradictions with people and what they say. Especially, I think when it comes to conservative or Republicans and Democrats, like there's a lot of similarities.
Of course.
The pivoting and the propaganda, honestly, focus on these three things. We can ever do whatever the fuck we want, because the Democrats, their party's not going to have our best interest. It's really up to us as a people to hold them accountable and push them like, hey, you're not doing this, you need to do something. Like people leaving out of Georgia, like Delta and the All-Star game or whatever. I think it was the All-Star game pulled out, right?
Oh no, that was Charlotte. Charlotte, because of the bathroom laws in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was a recent like sporting event. They moved it to Colorado.
Yeah, the NBA All-Star game. It was Charlotte last year. They moved it because they're
Colorado. People talk about Colorado, but you can mail in voting. It's easier. You can still vote. That's street suppression, how Georgia is. But you're having people forcing these companies and politicians to be accountable. Like, hey, this is fucked up. Why are you doing business here? You have to hurt your pockets. So literally, people are moving out. You had Delta talking about moving out. You have Coca-Cola talking about moving out of Georgia. Because no one's gonna care until their pockets are hurt.
Until it hits you.
It's all about the money. So like people cancel culture. It's like it's not cancel culture if you're holding people accountable to your beliefs. Because at the end of the day, like Dr. Seuss, no one ever protested that. Dr. Seuss said, you know what? On us for a better idea. This kind of is a little fucked up. Let's take it out. And then conservatives got mad because they thought it was an attack on their freedom of speech, when in reality, this is what capitalism is. You get to see what you put out there, and people have the ability to say, I don't like what you're doing. I don't want to support you.
Which is freedom
of speech. It's not cancel culture. It's literally capitalism. We get to choose what we want to support
and what we don't.
And I think it's great in the community. And when Black Lives Matter came up, and just with the recent past couple of years, I've seen a shift focus from these big companies, especially like Gen Z and millennials, and focusing back on smaller companies and supporting the smaller person.
Yeah.
And I'm loving that. Like I see people focus on makeup, buying clothes from each other. I've seen how many businesses open up in the last couple of years of candles or key changes, little bit of things, and glad to see because we had the era of malls and all this shopping, and that's dying down. And we're that's like we don't need these super cheap things because the quality sucks and it's and then all of it, everything looks the same.
Yep.
We're going back to how I think it should be and supporting each other, not these big Walmarts or Targets. Like support Mary down the street, or like the little restaurants you like that are actually like real food versus Applebee's,
artificial,
multi-million-dollar corporations.
And I think that's why we like Richmond, because all throughout here is small family like businesses,
mom and pop shops.
Love the vibe.
Exactly.
I know. How often do you actually eat like a main place, like a restaurant?
We really don't, and a lot of the places too, as well. Like just me driving back and forth to work, you have little farms that are selling vegetables or little plants. Like they have like a nursery there or something, and and we look a lot more to support little smaller restaurants to where they're kind of starting out and things like that. And
food is way better. Yeah.
Not that I have anything against name brand restaurants. I love that too.
I do. They suck.
But
small restaurants are better.
Of course. But
I mean, people good half the time.
Closing though, do you guys have any thoughts or opinions? Have you learned anything today? Maybe, possibly?
I think my biggest thing.
Sorry, it makes noise. Sorry, I love you.
It was great. It was great. I just think there's more that people can agree on if they just get past the surface level and go in with an open mind to not be offended. Yeah. To kind of learn and to grow. And I think once people learn and grow, and from a lot of stories I've seen of people going to college and just actually getting thrown into diversity and learning more about diversity, once you get out that bubble, you'll learn how toxic I did, because there's definitely a far right, and then there's a far left that's a little extreme too. Like any extreme is always extreme. So you can't just look at the extremes and compare. But I think with the recent politics, Republicans have fallen to that extreme versus like us versus you, and this is right and you're wrong, and it became such an attack versus just regular politics. It doesn't even feel politics anymore. It feels cult-like. Yeah. So it's not even Republicans. It's more like Trump's my savior kind of thing versus like, oh, I like these policies better. And I think we need to get away from that because honestly, if the Republican Party put up a better candidate versus Hillary, I might have swifted that way.
Oh, definitely.
Depending on what I like, what
it
wanted.
What are his policies? What's his plan?
Exactly. We need to focus back on policies and the plans and kind of like abortion, LGBTQ rights, all of
marriage,
that. The Supreme Court and the decisions have been made, and the fact that these states literally trying to contradict abortion rights, and LGBTQ rights, and go back to the Supreme Court, it's ridiculous. We're fighting the same fights over and over for what? When we need to progress. He's like,
it freaked me out a couple years ago when they're trying to repeal abortion and gay marriage. I'm like, I thought like 10 years. Like I thought,
why are we still focused on this? Why?
This is just wasting everybody's time. Like everybody's like energy, time, effort, money. What are we doing? But
if this is my viewpoint. If someone else's life doesn't harm you, harm them, or other people in any way, it should not fucking matter.
But people can't stay out of other people's business.
Like if you want to fuck a girl, or you want to fuck a guy, or you want to be both, or do whatever you want,
you want to
watch it. It doesn't matter.
You're fine. You're still living your life.
You want to do certain things.
No, I'm just. Who cares who you fuck? If you're my friend, you're my. Like, why?
Exactly.
If you want to transition and you find in your heart that there's something different about you, you want to go that way. That's who you are. It has no impact to me.
Do you want to be my friend? Yes or no? Okay, go separate lives.
There we go. Go from there.
Yeah. And that's it.
No. Are you good, Darnell? Do you have any closing thoughts before I let us out of this episode today?
No, I think we're good. I definitely feel like did a lot of Republicans. I feel like all of us lived a certain way, then like was removed from the bubble. And like then have different points of view. I wonder how many people think like us, and like from that, like are a lot of Republicans get removed from their bubble? That's kind of what I'm curious, because it feels like we all have that like the exact same perspective and the same different story.
I think it'd be interesting to
always
learn more about.
curious of people who were liberal then moved into Republican mindset.
Yes.
I'm more curious of what happened here because I know a few people who got money.
Mhm.
Like I have more money now. I live in Virginia and I'm well off, but it's to the point of what flips and becomes their mindset becomes more selfish.
Yeah.
Taxes and become I don't want to give my money to the poor. Why do you deserve it?
Yeah.
And I want to understand like what makes that mind flip or that switch to that.
Because see, I feel like it's easy to
Because I
hear
got
from
blocked
people. I think it's easier to hear from people going from Republican to liberal, but it's
Like me. Yeah.
rare
It's
that
very
I
easy.
hear the
Opposite.
other side from liberal to Republican.
But they're there.
I think
There
that's
are,
really interesting that
Ooh.
we
Sometimes
have a
it's marriage
conversation.
or something, but like I know sometimes it's a lot of times it's marriage or money.
They immediately get that money and realize the taxes because it's taxes. It boils down to then they don't want to pay that much for taxes. They feel like but
I'll pay more in taxes. That means I can have healthcare and everyone else can have healthcare.
I agree, but that's the selfish mindset.
It's selfish.
They come
And
into
that's
that money.
something maybe we can
Yeah.
find somebody to talk about. I would love to kind of see somebody else's opinion because like she said, it is a lot more uncommon to see somebody go from liberal to Republican. So I think that's something we can capitalize on as we grow, so on and so forth. But as for now, like, I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. I hope that you guys learned a lot from Emily and her experiences. And before we go, I just want to give just a little promotion. I'm sure JD doesn't mind. It's for our network. But please don't forget, guys, if you are a woman's woman and you are excited to hear what we have to say and you enjoyed Emily this week, you guys, I have a very, very big, exciting topic that I can't wait to sit down and speak with Emily on. A Modern Woman is premiering next week. We'll see you guys next week. Emily's actually going to be my very first guest. We have a very, very exciting episode waiting for you guys, and I just can't wait to share it with you. I really hope you enjoyed my production today and everything that Emily had to say, and hopefully, we all learned something. But until then, guys, this is a Modern Man podcast, a part of the Modern Podcast Network, hosted by JD Farrell. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I can't wait to see you guys next week. I know JD can't wait as well. I hope you really enjoy this. Let us know your comments and your thoughts down below. If you guys have any stories about something that you've experienced, maybe you flip-flop. Maybe you're somebody that we can speak to that was a liberal and turned Republican. Who knows? Let us know your thoughts and your opinions. We always love to hear it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.